My name is Average Joe, and I'm a proud geek with expertise in movies, superheroes, and animation.
And my name is Pixel Patch. I'm a joyful geek with an expertise in gaming, both tabletop and video.
Our mission is to bring nerd culture to the masses.
And by sticking it all under the microscope.
Welcome to the Bat Jar Podcast. Hello there, and welcome to the Bat Jar Podcast, where we put nerd culture under the microscope.
I would put it under the microscope, but it doesn't all fit. I think you're underestimating the sheer amount of internet, unless we're using one of those like new advanced quartz crystals that fit exabytes of data. But I have doubts. I have doubts about your ability to fit it all under the microscope.
Okay,
You've been doing this for how long?
Luckily we do this, one subject at a time. So
one game at a time, Ralph.
Yeah. So this is going on Cyber Monday.
Oh, all right.
So I'm sure...
As you're jogging past hordes of human beings... Oh, no, that's Black Friday.
Yeah, no, this is Cyber Monday.
As you're sitting at home, relaxed and recovering from broken bones from Black Friday.
And making purchases online.
Yep.
Spending
money that you shouldn't be spending.
Yeah, hopefully you get... Well, maybe they're doing holiday shopping or Christmas shopping, because... that I take no shame in saying the word Christmas.
Yeah, no, Christmas is a good time. Well, the funny thing is, this year I'm going to try re-gifting.
Well, you probably shouldn't announce that, because if people listen to this, they're going to be aware of that.
Well, yes and no, but what if they don't know I own the things?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I have a lot of stuff stored away in my home. I'm like a squirrel, the squirrel of gifts.
Okay. So yeah, maybe you're listening to this while you're doing Cyber Monday purchases. I bring this up just to, you guys can't tell, but I have a gross mustache because it is Movember.
That Movember is actually where I first got my beard.
Oh, really?
I kind of misunderstood Movember and just kind of grew facial hair for the month. Oh. And so that was the start of this glorious facial covering.
Yes, Pixel indeed has a beard.
Yeah.
For people who don't know what he looks like.
More knowledge.
But anyway, I have a gross mustache. Yep. Can you validate that statement?
I can validate it. It is horrifying. I'm trying not to look at you, but it's quite all right.
So anyway, I bring that up because even though today is Cyber Monday, tomorrow is Giving Tuesday.
Oh.
So it's a campaign across North America to encourage charitable giving after all the craziness of Black Friday and Cyber Monday.
Nice. So when Cyber Monday gifts arrive, you just throw them in a homeless shelter and they can use them.
Sure. Or for Giving Tuesday, I'm growing my mow this year kind of in solidarity with the people who are actually raising money for men's health. So if you are out there raising money with growing your mustache out, post a link to your page in our Facebook group.
Yeah.
And, we'd love to encourage people to give, especially on Giving Tuesday.
I think that's a great idea, actually. Nice.
And I explained this to you before we started, Pixel, but now that you're a regular on the show, you don't have to come every week with a nerdy or geeky thing you've been up to.
Oh, man.
But you seem pretty excited about the thing you had, so here's your chance.
So I joined a buddy of mine on a 24-hour Dungeons & Dragons live stream. So they got a new book from Wizards of the Coast and literally played
What's that?
Wizards of the Coast is a company that produces the story content for the game. So think of like any board game imagine them releasing a new expansion for the board game every 2 months, and so you just keep on playing bigger and bigger versions of that board game. Wow. So I ended up winning about $200 worth of merchandise, including miniatures and the newest adventure book. So very, very excited to start that up.
So let me get this straight. You played a game for 24 hours?
Well, my friend... Tony ended up playing for 24 hours, and I was part of the audience that was contributing money, kind of like Hunger Games. And when you contribute money, you can give the characters in-game special items.
Did they not have bathroom breaks?
Oh, they had bathroom breaks, but there was about 12 of them, so they rotated around for the 24 hours.
Wow.
I think Tony took a 10-minute break and took breaks to eat, but that was about it. He was very exhausted.
Okay. Well, there you go. That's neat.
Mm-hmm.
We're drinking a hot chocolate. The Bat Jar studio the halls have been decked.
Yeah, magically transformed, I'd almost say. It's one of those like epic transformation sequences where you close the door and you reopen it. Suddenly it's the new season and the new set.
Yeah, and the even the bat jar looks a little different.
Yeah,
the conventional Batman jar has been replaced with a more of a nutcrackery jar.
However, we don't know that it's not Batman wearing a nutcracker outfit.
It's true. Batman has been known to go undercover
yeah.
and use fake names and stuff. So this could be Batman for all we know.
We don't know. We really don't know.
But yeah, we got our hot chocolate here. We're getting ready for the season, and we'll be talking more about what that means for our podcast later. Mm-hmm. But right now, it's time to go into the news.
Woo, woo, woo.
So we haven't had a chance to really talk about the news in a while because we've had just lengthy topics.
Yep.
So I have three topics for you to choose from.
Okay, all right, I'm ready.
We can talk about how Venom has now worldwide grossed more than Wonder Woman.
Wow. All right.
We can talk about the announcement of the name of the new Birds of Prey and Harley Quinn movie.
Okay.
Or we can talk about the trailer that launched for the live-action Lion King.
I think I'm going to go with number 3. I'm really curious about number 1, but I think I'm going to go with number 3.
Did you watch the trailer for the live-action Lion King?
I did end up watching it, and at the same time, my YouTube video scrolled into a live-action take on it made with human beings wearing paper-cut masks. It was the funniest thing in the world, but okay, back to the real one.
Did you know this movie was happening?
I did not know until that trailer dropped.
Really?
Yeah. For some reason, I knew about Mulan, I knew about Aladdin, but for some reason, Lion King just kind of dropped out. This is interesting because I was really excited for Aladdin, but I was really not excited for Lion King or Mulan. So yeah, it's hard. What was your take on it?
Well, I've known about this movie for a long time now.
Okay.
It's been announced for at least a year and a half, if not 2 years.
Goodness.
The last time they had D23, D23 for people who don't remember is
it's the E3 of Disney. That's not helpful.
it's a conference. It's basically a Comic-Con that Disney hosts.
Yeah,
and they're very they take away people's phones before they go into the screening room. So any of the information you hear about the event is basically all
hearsay.
People on Twitter saying, this is what I saw, this is what the footage was. Mm-hmm. And they did a panel about the Lion King there. And I think it was about 6 months ago they announced who the vocal cast was going to be. And I've known for a long time that was going to be Jon Favreau directing it.
Mm-hmm. The visuals are good, but I don't think they should be doing it.
What do you mean?
They're not changing the story. They're just revamping the golden age of Disney. But the only reason Disney had a golden age was because it had original content.
Okay, to be technical, the golden age of Disney was like the 40s. What you're referring to is the Disney Renaissance.
Right.
We did a whole episode on it back in the day.
So yeah, the Renaissance had a whole bunch of original content, which helped it stand out.
I mean, if you really know the Lion King, there are sources that would suggest it's not original content. Mm-hmm. But I'll condone that. I'll agree with you there that it is a strange decision. Mm-hmm. But if you think about it, really this whole movement of Disney live actions, it's about taking the stories that people like and reinterpreting it in a new audience, in a new way.
And sometimes I think it works, and sometimes I think, I'm really excited for Aladdin. I think that could have some very striking visuals and some really impressive storytelling. But for things with the visual, gags like Mulan, or for the serious and animal prolific contents like Lion King, I don't think it'll hit the mark as much. I actually predict that those two are going to do horribly, and that Aladdin is going to do far better in the box office than both those two.
Well, it's funny you say that because it turns out that in the first 24 hours, 224 million people watched the trailer. Or I shouldn't say that. The trailer was watched 224 million times.
My goodness.
That's the only trailer that had a stronger debut than that for Disney was Infinity War.
What the crap? Okay.
So
all right.
There are a lot of people who are
apparently excited. All right. Well, I stand corrected. I sit corrected. That's better.
Yeah. Well, okay. So these Disney live actions, they started essentially doing the ones that are like Alice in Wonderland and Cinderella and The Jungle Book, which were movies made at a time when storytelling in those specific films was simpler and not as complex.
Right.
So in bringing it to live action, they really
had to add a little bit to the storyline.
Yeah, they tried to make it more complex, more developed. Like Prince Charming actually was given a personality, and the story of The Jungle Book I thought was very interesting. I don't know if you saw the live action Jungle Book.
I actually enjoyed that one quite a bit, mostly because of the bear, who's
Baloo?
Bill Murray.
Bill Murray.
Yeah, Bill Murray was just a fantastic kind of. He was very bearish in a very Bill Murray way.
Yeah. And this is the thing. So Jon Favreau directed that version of the Jungle Book. And, and after that movie was a success, they tapped him to do The Lion King.
Nice. Okay, so they at least have someone who's used to like getting the flow of like animal. But I don't know, Lion King's going to be really serious. I'm very curious.
Well, it's it's funny to call this live action because at least with the Jungle Book, you had the one human actor there.
Right. This is going to be fully CGI.
But it's CGI done to look like live action.
Yeah.
Like with the Jungle Book, I was amazed because it looked like they were actually in a jungle the whole time. But it was all sound stages and computer generated images.
Yeah.
So it was remarkable to see that it was.
They're at the point where they can do this, and it's enjoyable. Like I'm really thankful that I'm in this age of cinema. Like it's as much as people complain about CGI content, it's very, very enjoyable. But I do wish we could get some nice original content. Like, can you imagine how much better it would be if we had a whole story that we didn't know about, building these great cinematic universes?
Yeah, and so this is the thing. Like with Beauty and the Beast was the first Disney Renaissance movie to get this live action treatment, and for the most part, it was a retelling of the animated film with some additional content, additional songs, additional subplots, whatever. And the experience of that was more so for fans of the original to just see it brought to live action. Right. With this, it's still more or less animated because even though it's animation looks, I thought the trailer looked incredible.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not.
You could have sworn they were actually in Africa.
Yeah, no, they had some incredible visual takes.
And they are indeed continuing the trend of it being a musical. So you still have Elton John and Tim Rice and Hans Zimmer and all those guys doing the music.
I'm going to go into that so skeptical. I don't even know if I'm going to try it. I'm going to try and go see it. But, man.
Well, the thing about The Lion King is that, like Aladdin, like the Beauty and the Beast movie from the 90s, those were actually just really well-done stories. So unlike the older Disney movies, but when they put into live action, they have to try and give it some complexity.
This one will have it already.
It already has it there, so it's like you're concerned of, well, they're just going to do the exact same like shot-for-shot remake.
Right.
Maybe not. Maybe they'll try to add more to make it even more complex. Because even though The Lion King is a great film, it's one of my favorite movies of all time, favorite Disney movie, there are still kind of some plot holes in there. There's some inconsistencies. There's things that they don't really explain. Like, why is it that there just happens to be a drought in the Pride Lands when Scar is king? Like, they don't really explain that very well.
Right.
So I'm sure there's things they can do to make the movie more.
We'll see. I'm always curious how they handle the comedy. I'm always curious how they handle the seriousness. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm holding my pen up until
but 224 million views in one day.
I mean, it was one of the best-selling movies. I'm not surprised people are excited to see what it might look like. However, what were the negative reactions, or what was the downvote count, I suppose?
You know what? Let me look at where it is on YouTube right now.
Okay, yeah. Let's take a look. C'est l'histoire de la vie. I listened to it in French when I was a kid, so... All right, what are we at here? 36 million?
Yeah, so they're probably counting the views on all channels. So on the official Walt Disney Studios channel, it has 36 million views. So it's a portion of it. On this same official Walt Disney Studios video, there are 1,020,000 likes. Okay. And there are 29,000 dislikes.
That makes sense. Yeah. I think people who will either absolutely love it or are really not looking forward to it.
It's still number one on trending on YouTube.
Oh my goodness.
And it came out 3 days ago.
That's pretty good. All right, don't go to the comment section. As we learned from Ralph Breaks the Internet, never go to the comment section.
I won't go to the comment section. But I think this, for me, it just validates my opinion that The Lion King is extremely popular. Yep. And that people... there were people like me who were probably paying attention to all the news behind the scenes and knew the movie was coming, and then there were people like you who...
There was no idea until the trailer dropped, and it's suddenly everywhere.
I was actually watching a Christmas movie with a friend when I went on Facebook because we were watching the trailers, and I saw it was on Facebook. I paused the movie and said, we got to stop what we're doing. We got to watch this.
Put it on the screen. Put it on the board.
And I didn't even want to take the time to Chromecast it. I just literally held my phone in front of him we need to watch this right now. I can't wait.
That's going to be me when Final Fantasy VII gets his remake release. Very excited for that.
In conclusion, I think the movie looks excellent. I think it's going to be excellent. I can't wait to see it again on the big screen.
For me, I have my doubts, but once again, I will sit and enjoy the movie in all its visual glory. But we'll see. We'll see if it hits those soft points near my chest. Mostly my heart.
And as we mentioned last week, we are continuing this trend of talking about Disney, actually.
Ralph Part 2.
Yeah, Ralph Part 2, the sequel. We're talking about the new film that just came out, Ralph Breaks the Internet.
And breaks my heart. No, I'm kidding.
So with this film, we're going to talk about it without spoiling things, and then we're going to get to the point where we talk about spoilers, so there'll be a time code in the description where you can essentially skip around. If you haven't seen the movie yet, you can listen to us talk about all the general things and the things we thought were interesting, and then skip ahead to our final thoughts so that if and when you see the film, you won't be spoiled for anything specifically that happens.
Yep.
Like a lot of films that come out nowadays, the trailers have some of the best parts of the movie. So if you've seen any of the trailers, we'll probably bring up some of the stuff that are in the trailers. If you haven't seen any of the trailers, then maybe just stop listening now and go.
If you don't know anything at all about Ralph Breaks the Internet, maybe go see it first, then come back and have a listen.
Yeah.
All right, so we're starting with, I think, the critics' review of it.
Yeah, so on good old Rotten Tomatoes.
Them tomates. All right.
Ralph Breaks the Internet currently has 86%.
That's pretty good. That actually trends well with what I was thinking, although it's high. I think they would have given it a 74. That was my going into this idea. It's like 74 would seem good for critics, but 86 is great.
Well, so Wreck-It Ralph, the first film, has 87%.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah. No, it was a good sequel.
And on Rotten Tomatoes, they kind of count how many reviews the movie has and how many are fresh, how many are rotten. Wreck-It Ralph has about 178 reviews from critics.
Okay.
Ralph Breaks the Internet has 148. So it's a marginally smaller number for the new film, and probably because it is literally
in
the first week of its release.
Yeah. All right.
So in terms of how the critics feel about it, they seem to be feeling just about the same as they did with the last film.
Right. Just an enjoyable romp.
Where there seems to actually be a distinction is with the audience.
What's the audience change score?
Okay, so on Wreck-It Ralph, the first film, the audience score was 86%.
Wow, really close to the critics again.
Yeah, so the first Wreck-It Ralph is kind of one of those movies where it seemed critics and audiences agreed.
It's like this is just, it was a new IP as well. Like, once again, that idea of like Disney working on, with other visuals, a new idea. So now the big question is, what's the second one?
Just for the record, IP stands for intellectual property.
Thank you. Yes. Also, we should note that the first movie, as of right now, has over 100,000 reviews in the audience score.
230,000.
230,000. Wow. All right. Yeah. So a lot of people have been reviewing it, and it stayed high.
Surprisingly, yes.
Yeah.
However, with Ralph Breaks the Internet, the audience score is 69%.
Ooh, bit of a drop. Once again, near the 70s, though.
Yeah, but it's still in the 60s.
Yeah, it's still in the 60s.
So it's still... like the bowl of popcorn that's next to it is still a bowl of popcorn, not like a Rotten Tomato.
Right.
But it's not considered like fresh by their standards.
So how many people have reviewed it so far?
So get this, for the new movie, there's only 2,500 people that have given it a review.
Within the first week, though, so that's pretty good, but we'll see if it trends upwards.
That kind of worries me, though, don't you think? Like, in theory, the more reviews there are, the scores would go down. So 69 is not that high anyway. So
it might go down to like 66, 64. Hopefully not too much lower.
So what do you think?
That makes sense. I really enjoyed the movie, but I could easily shift my perspective to see how people wouldn't enjoy it. But for me personally, absolutely love the movie. I'm a big fan of like references and jokes and stuff. So the content was enjoyable, and it addressed a few things we spoke about last week in the podcast that I was keeping my eyes out for. So
you think that it makes sense that audiences would generally not like this one as much?
Yeah, I like it,
even though critics seem to like it about the same.
I don't know who these critics are, but I was expecting critics to be at around 75 and the audience to be near there. So it's the critics are way higher than I thought, and the audience is lower than I thought. Yeah, typical movie critics really seem to like it, but what I found interesting is actually I follow some YouTubers who are, some of them are movie-based YouTubers, like they review movies, and some of them, this one guy I was watching, his name is Angry Joe. Okay. You've heard of him before? No, but I have heard of you, so. Okay, no, I'm Average Joe, Angry Joe, Sleepy Joe, the many faces of Joe, really. Yeah, no, it's a different guy. Oh, okay. He really disliked the movie. He thought it was awful. Oh, really? And a lot of his criticism comes from how they portray the internet, and we'll talk about that later. Okay. But I imagine perhaps there's part of the audience that
maybe that was a similar issue they had with the film.
See, I enjoyed the way they portrayed the internet because it wasn't just them driving through a dumpster fire. It's great. I actually enjoyed the carefree take on the internet.
Yeah, and of course, I didn't even see the first Wreck-It Ralph when it came out in theaters, so I don't remember what the trailers were like. And I wonder maybe the trailers for Ralph Breaks the Internet just set everyone's bars too high.
Right.
And they were expecting something more than what they got.
Well, I think the big thing was we couldn't have any expectations of the first Wreck-It Ralph movie because no one knew what it was. Like, it was, once again, a new intellectual property, and this one, people could go in expecting another Wreck-It Ralph 1.
You say that it's a new intellectual property, but the marketing I did see for it emphasized the fact that there was like the villains all sitting around the table.
Well, of course, but it's not about those villains. Those villains give flavor and are recognizable, but the story is about a new villain kind of idea.
How do you think the movie did at the box office?
Oh my goodness. I'm going to say it's because it was popular, but it wasn't. I'm going to give it 10th or 15th place. I think it's going to be popular, but not that popular.
And against what? Like you say 10th, 15th out of...
in the recent Disney movie releases.
Okay.
Like, I don't know. Not as popular as Moana or something like that.
So, yeah, we discussed in last week's episode that Wreck-It Ralph is actually one of the lower grossing films in the current era of Disney. Wreck-It Ralph did indeed... It played over the American Thanksgiving weekend, which is why here in Canada it opened up on the Wednesday night.
Okay.
And
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, the week of the American Thanksgiving, which is on a Thursday, they always release new movies on the Wednesday.
Oh.
So they track kind of like the 3-day performance of the movie, but then also the 5-day performance over the long weekend.
Okay. So
it turns out that Wreck-It Ralph is estimated to have brought in about $84 million over the 5-day holiday weekend.
What does that compare to? Because I'm really bad at money comparisons.
Yeah, so essentially it's the second largest 5-day Thanksgiving opener ever, and that means that there's only one other movie that's come out over the Thanksgiving weekend that has made more than Ralph Breaks the Internet.
Wow, okay, what was that?
I'll have to look here.
All right.
It just narrowly beat out Moana's $82 million that it made back in 2016.
I wasn't expecting it to be as...
Oh, it's Frozen.
Oh, that's fantastic. All right, wow, I was not expecting it to be second. I was expecting it to definitely be 10th, but I guess people... Wow, all right. I mean, I'm happy for it. I love that the nerdy content of my movies is getting a huge following, but yeah, I was not expecting that. What's third?
Moana.
Oh, sorry, fourth.
Toy Story 2.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, I'm looking at the list here of like Thanksgiving weekend releases, and it's a lot of Disney movies. Ironically, Creed 2, though, is which also came out this weekend, is appeared on the list as well.
Creed 2?
The sequel to Creed, which is a follow-up to Rocky.
I never saw those. It slipped past me. All right,
we should. I haven't seen them either. We should do that sometime.
Movie night. I'm down for that. I'm super down for that. All right.
Yeah. So Ralph Breaks the Internet has done well financially.
All right.
It made $84 million over 5 days. I think when you account for the first 3 days, it was like $55 million. Mm-hmm. But it's like, Wednesday through Friday. Like it is a holiday in the States, but at the same time, it's like, is that really a time a lot of people go to the movies?
Or are they spending it with their family, as they should?
But considering it's like the second highest, Thanksgiving release outside of Frozen, breaks my heart that it outscores Moana just barely. But
yeah, I would have been happy with Wreck-It Ralph as a third place, actually. But
I'll take. You know what? Moana and Anna and Elsa were in this movie, so I bet that it wouldn't have done as well if it had not had those three. The other people I don't care about as much, but those three, there you go.
That works.
So let's get into the actual. We've talked about what the critics think, what audiences think, how it did. Obviously, we know how the audience thinks because they paid money to go see it.
Right.
But we should probably get into a synopsis here. So, what do you think the story was?
For me, the general story is...
We only have 8 hours to save my game.
We're going to the internet. Oh, cool.
Hi. What the?
You're coming with us, kid.
The internet is under assault.
The game's crashing. Let's go.
I'm freaking out hard.
Ralph Breaks the Internet.
I'm gonna rock it!
Dang internet.
Rated PG, November 21st.
Venelope, like as we talked about in the last podcast, we were curious why the characters never kind of questioned their existence. Like, they're inside a video game being controlled by people every day. Why is this not bothersome to them? So this Wreck-It Ralph movie, 6 years later, Venelope is finally kind of unhappy with the same old, same old. And, she's hanging out with Ralph every evening. They're having a grand old time, and she kind of just wants more out of life. Ralph, however, who's been a bad guy for 30 years, is just happy as a clam being able to live and enjoy his life. So he creates a special track for Venelope. She goes on it. The user controlling her freaks out, breaks the handle. And, of course, since the arcade is 6 years old, they're no longer producing that driving wheel for her car. So they have to go to the internet and get a new one.
Okay. Yeah, and as we established when we talked about the first film, in this universe, when your game is unplugged, it means all the characters will die unless they've escaped into the power bar. So it becomes like a rescue mission almost. We have to try and save the world of Sugar Rush.
Yeah. So there's some really funny stuff that happens. I don't think it's a spoiler. A lot of the children that raced against Venelope end up as adoptive children for Fix-It Felix and Calhoun. And, oh my goodness, it's a pretty good time.
Yeah. So, this isn't the first time that I've seen a movie about characters going into the internet. It's not the first TV. This idea of traveling into the internet is not a new idea.
Yeah.
Futurama did it. The Emoji Movie, as terrible as that was, did it. The Digimon movie did it. Like, there's all kinds of stories out there about characters traveling into the internet.
Mm-hmm. A really interesting one. Have you ever seen the anime Summer Wars?
I've seen parts of it.
That one was a very fun visual look at the internet, and Wreck-It Ralph has a very evocative, like, AAA title version of what I enjoyed from the internet in Summer Wars. So okay. I'll talk a bit more about that later.
I do know that the director of Summer Wars directed the Digimon movie Where They Go to the Internet.
Oh, interesting. All right, I like that.
Same creative mind there. I don't know, at this point in your geeky, nerdy life, have you seen enough stories about going to the internet that this just felt like unnecessary?
Not unnecessary. I was actually kind of excited to see how they would portray it. Like, once again, like, the Summer Wars internet is a lot of small locations surrounded by, like, a lot of white space. So I was very, I really enjoyed, like, oh, what happens if he does click on that advertisement? Or, like, are they going to portray this thing? And I really enjoyed how they had these little users, these little, like, pop figure-looking users, as you mentioned, traveling around from website to website in these little vehicles, these little data vehicles. I enjoyed it. No, I enjoyed the way their internet was portrayed.
Before we go any further, I want to address something that at least was at my screening. I'm not sure if it was at yours. Mm-hmm. But like Incredibles 2, the movie actually opens with the director and a couple of the producers like talking to the audience.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I was like, what is the point of this? Like, are they thanking us for coming to the movies? Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know. Did you find it nice to hear from them like that?
It was kind of neat. As a kid, I didn't understand it. As a kid,
wait, are you saying you were a kid when you saw Ralph Breaks the Internet?
No, well, like, as a kid, the Disney movies had directors, like Pixar. Finding Nemo had directors speaking at the beginning.
Really?
And at first I didn't understand it. And then as more and more movies released from Pixar, I actually became familiar with the directors and started enjoying their commentary because they were just decently nice people. And so it was really nice to see these guys, although they felt too much like CEO in Suits and not enough creative geniuses, in my opinion. But that's just
me. And that's how you felt about seeing Rich Moore and those other guys?
Yeah, they just felt like CEOs more than storytellers. Like, I don't think they should have been dressed in suits, but, they did what they could.
I think I preferred the Incredibles one where they were just basically like, yeah, we know it's been a long time.
Yeah, no, exactly. That one's fun because they have some heart in there. This one was just kind of like, all right, this is happening.
So there's a lot of Disney sequels out there, but most of them are direct-to-video. So I think I saw a stat saying that this is like one of the first feature-length, theatrically released Disney animated sequels.
That speaks a lot to the story then. Like, that really gives a big indication that this is not the norm. But I think it's hard, like, because I think a main problem is with a lot of princess movies, it's happily ever after. So what are you doing afterwards? It's very hard to make a solid release story. Whereas
You clearly haven't seen Cinderella 3 where they go back in time and alter history.
I have not, but oh my goodness,
Or The Lion King 2 where they do Romeo and Juliet instead of Hamlet.
Oh, I have seen that one actually. There you go. That is one that I have seen. Was that direct to video?
Yes.
All right, there you go.
The animation is very bad.
Lacking. All right.
But okay, I was just asking if you were annoyed with seeing another movie about the internet. Like you, I was very impressed with the world building of the first film, and I'm like excited to see. I was excited to see how they were going to portray the internet, and I really liked it. It felt like the internet was just this big city, and essentially the size of your website depended on how big your building
was. Yeah, so each building on the block, if you have a MMORPG with a million users, it's this sprawling edifice. However, if you have this little website, you just got like a little house. Yeah, a little office.
And like the online video games look like attractions at an amusement park, whereas Google looks like this massive skyscraper.
Yeah, or Amazon is this huge box with like thousands of drones flying in and out of it.
Yeah, there are a lot of Easter eggs in this movie.
And you would have to play the entire movie in slow-mo, basically, to catch it all.
Because I missed some of the references. I missed some of the cameos. And I know you said you love Easter eggs, so I'm sure you were having a heyday.
Oh, I was having a grand old time. Although one of the just really in-your-face ones was one of my favorites. Alan Tudyk actually plays a search engine called Knowsmore. And he talks like this, and he's like, oh, well, and he's just this really, like, nerdy
I didn't even recognize his voice.
Oh, exactly. No, he does a really good job of it. But as Ralph is trying to search something, he's trying to autocomplete a sentence like, hey, can I look for foreman? Formidable? And it's like, oh, sorry, my autocorrect is a tad aggressive today.
Yeah, that's in one of the trailers. So.
I still love that. Like, as much as I had seen it before, it just played out really well.
Did you find that there were too many references?
No, they kept it flowing pretty good. Like, I think some of the references got in the way of the story, but most of the time the references were a really good like haha moment. Like, they're walking to eBay and there's a whole bunch of advertisements, and then a pop-up blocker just punches one of the advertisements in the face.
Because the pop-up blocker is personified as like a security guard.
Yeah, and it was really, really enjoyable.
And just related to that, I didn't realize it, but that Surge character from the power bar, he's meant to be like a surge projector on a power bar.
Yeah.
I didn't catch that at all.
Oh, nice. So the second time you got it, it's like, this is new, this is dangerous, we should fear it. Of course, the surge protector would be freaked out by something that uses this much data and this much power. He just cuts off everything.
But the way they portray the internet is very interesting, and like, I mean, there are. I'm surprised how much I kind of want to know actually how much money had to be spent on getting the licenses for all these companies, because there's Amazon, Google, I think you see Facebook, you see all
Twitter,
Instagram. Instagram is like an art gallery. It's like that kind of stuff makes me laugh. I'm like, that's a clever way of representing this website.
Yeah. And
they do a good job of throughout the film, as you're in this like internet city doing stuff, to then cutting to real people in the real world interacting with the internet. It's like, you break something in the city and then you cut to someone on an iPad and their internet goes out. And you're like,
it was a really fun marriage of this, like what it might look like and kind of what how your actions are reflected on the internet. Like Twitter, for example, someone tweets a picture of a cat, and then, like birds, they all start singing the same song. So all the little birds around that initial picture tweet the same song, and I was like, oh, that's adorable. Like, I actually really, really enjoyed that kind of feel for it.
A lot of the action in the movie revolves around this website called BuzzTube,
right?
Which is clearly meant to be like a combo of YouTube and BuzzFeed. And I think where the internet critics, where the YouTubers like Angry Joe, not me, not Average Joe, but Angry Joe, I think where they draw criticism with the film is how BuzzTube is portrayed.
Right.
Because the movie makes it seem like it's super easy to make a ton of money on the internet. All you have to do is make these funny videos and you'll get all this money.
Right.
It's like, oh, you get people liking your video and you'll get paid money.
Whereas I've read a lot of articles, and I was I agree with them on that point. Like, I've read a lot of articles where people are physically becoming very ill, putting the amount of work they need into Twitch streaming and YouTube videos in order to make a living. Like, it's very, very difficult to make any amount of money making YouTube videos.
Well, and if anyone's following YouTube-related news these days, there's been a lot of different things happening. There's a lot of copyright claims that have been happening on YouTubers' videos. And when a copyright claim is done and makes it demonetized, the video can no longer be, they can't receive ad revenue from that video.
Yeah.
Or content issues, people saying it's inappropriate for YouTube's audience, so therefore it gets demonetized.
No, it's a really difficult world for them. Like, there was a Twitch streamer that was making sure that they wouldn't lose subscribers, and they were streaming pretty much every day, and they ended up in the hospital at 30 with like collapsed lungs, with a lot of illnesses that are associated with them doing this work too much, sitting down.
And not to pick on YouTube, but as a platform, it certainly prioritizes certain types of content, certain users, and they have algorithms that kind of determine like what gets promoted. So you kind of have to play their game to make money. And I say all of this just because Angry Joe brought up the point of saying that this movie makes the whole experience of being like a virtual star super easy and super glamorous.
Whereas it's very difficult and it's very thankless. Yeah.
And related to that, his and other people's criticism of the film is how it portrays the internet, because this is a very child-friendly portrayal of the internet.
Right. And I kind of enjoy that. Like, I don't know that it's going to encourage people to go on the internet after they've seen this movie. Like, I've just used my phone as I do normally, but this is how I like to consume my internet. I don't know. Like, I'm a pretty PG enjoying content guy, so that version of the internet is very close to what I prefer. Like, I enjoy people just, looking for new things, enjoying all the oddities that the internet has to offer, and it was kind of representative of the lights and colors of the internet that I like.
Obviously this is a family film, so they're not going to show anything that is explicit.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Despite the prevalence of whatever that kind of stuff on the real internet. But even the way that they portray internet culture, it's kind of like a
far friendlier.
Yeah, and I get it. This is fiction, but they're going to such great lengths to, I'm putting air quotes around, realistically portray what the interface of the internet looks like,
that it takes away from what the internet actually is.
Yeah, like this is and they give a rose tinted glasses look. It's like, oh, this is what we want the internet to look like, not just like what it actually is.
Now, is that necessarily a bad idea? Like, if this is what you would want your internet to be like, is that not a call for maybe people to change their content a little bit?
Perhaps, and we can't, we'll bring up specific things that I'm thinking of in spoilers. It was interesting just to see how that played out.
Yeah.
And if you've seen the trailers, you know that a bunch of Disney characters make appearances. And, Ready Player One came out earlier this year. That was a movie that was released by Warner Brothers, and there were all kinds of intellectual properties in that film, but you'll notice none of them were ones owned by Disney.
Yep.
So it's almost as, and again, I realized that all the wheels were in motion for this movie to get made many years ago, but it almost felt like Disney saw Ready Player One and said, okay, let's have our version of that. Let's put all of our IPs into one movie.
Now, to be fair, up until that sequence, the Oh My Disney sequence, where they just have all the references shoved in, that specific section of the website kind of felt like it was just there to sell merchandise, whereas the rest of the movie did feel like a movie. That was kind of my idea. Like, they could have cut out that section of the movie and the story would still have made sense, because that just kind of felt like a lot of product placement. But I don't know. But before that point and a little bit after that point, it felt like a movie.
Yeah, and we spend less time with the world established in the first film. Like, there's much less of an emphasis on video games this time around.
Yeah,
I would say.
Yeah,
like you don't in this, and maybe this is a spoiler. This isn't. You don't see as much of the characters in the first film, except for Ralph and Venelope. They're like kind of like the stars of the movie, and everybody else is kind of comes in and out. So I imagine Pixel, as somebody who is more of a video game person, you probably were disappointed that there was less focus on the video games.
Yeah, I was expecting a lot more like MMORPG jokes and a lot of like internet gaming jokes, but it was more internet content jokes, which makes a lot of sense, of course. Like, it was more YouTube and less EverQuest and World of Warcraft. But, it was one of those moments where I didn't notice it until the end of the movie. So maybe they did a good job. Who knows? It pulled the wool over my eyes. The merino wool.
All right, so I think this is a good time to start pivoting into spoilers. So I really enjoyed Ralph Breaks the Internet. I love crossover. I love pop culture references. And I think that there's enough there that isn't just pop culture references for, especially if you enjoyed the first film.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen the first film yet, I made the point of saying last week you need to watch the first film first.
Definitely. It just helps feel for these characters a bit more and really follow along with them.
Yeah, and if you don't have time to watch the first film, just listen to our podcast about the first film, and then go see the second film.
That's it.
All right, 3, 2, 1.
It's spoiler time. Get your spoiler headphones on and put your spoiler eye caps on, and don't walk blindly into a wall.
Okay, so first of all, you mentioned this earlier, the idea that the whole kind of thrusting forward of the plot is that Vanellope's bored.
Yeah. So, classic thing on eBay. There's only a few of these, arcade pieces that are left. Which, as someone who has worked with a lot of arcade pieces at my own work, the rarity of her driving wheel not being available on the internet seems a little bit suspicious. Because Sugar Rush seems like a really well-produced game, but it's one of those things where...
Also, I guess eBay is the only...
eBay is the only website you can buy stuff from. Well, it's kind of funny because Sugar Rush is very similar to Hello Kitty Drivers for the Wii U, which never released enough copies and therefore became a $200 item. It's a horrible game, but it's just not available. So maybe Sugar Rush isn't as popular a game as you think it is, and all you ended up with was a few arcade cabinets, and this is the only driving wheel left for it.
Right.
So, it's never addressed, but maybe Sugar Rush isn't that
couldn't you
popular.
just put any driving wheel on there? Why does it have to be specifically the Sugar Rush one?
From the way that it snapped off, it seems like it could have been fixed with any wheel because the wheel shaft was still one piece. So, clearly, Mr. What's his face? The guy who owns the place.
Yeah, the arcade owner.
The arcade owner clearly doesn't do a lot of 3D printing, but I would have just tied a wooden board to it.
I don't mean to tie it, I don't mean to address, that actually wasn't, that is a plot hole, but that's not why I was even thinking of that.
Right.
When you were describing kind of the Vanellope's situation earlier, you made it sound like Ralph was more content with living his life as it was because his status quo had changed from the end of the first film. Mm-hmm. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, so Wreck-It Ralph, he had been playing his game for 30 years and being the bad guy for 30 years.
Which they changed in this one. They mentioned that it's been fewer than 30 years, and I was like...
Oh.
He was like, and I was like, but you said 30 years in the last one, and now he said 27 or 28 years.
Oh, jeez.
I was like, plot hole!
Yeah, but if you've spent 30 years in a terrible job, and then suddenly you get a decent or even a good job, in this case for Wreck-It Ralph, you'd be so happy. Whereas Vanellope, who, she didn't have the best time with Sugar Rush, but she's a racer. It's all about new tracks. It's all about, Ralph's game is based a lot on repetition and getting good at it. You play old arcade games until you are master at it. Whereas with racing games, there's not really a lot to master. If you're playing Mario Kart, the tracks and you can of course spend the time mastering it, but everyone enjoys a new track. And so
the variables that come with racing games is that you're always playing against different people and the weapons are different or whatever. But but it's just interesting because Vanellope, her whole journey of the first film was that she wanted to be a racer. She wanted to get into actually being one of the racers in Sugar Rush.
Candy Crush. Swap the cars to make the cars disappear.
So for part of me is this. Did you not think this was going to happen? Did you not think through all those years you were pining to become a racer? Did you not think that eventually you might get a little...
Well, it's the idea of the jealous man, if only I was a sausage seller. Oh, wait, if only I was a car salesman. If only I was selling helicopters. Never happy with what they have.
It's the grass is always greener.
Yeah, which is kind of silly for Vanellope. She's a child. Yes, of course she wants something new and different all the time. But yeah, no, I wasn't expecting her to be so disappointed with her lifestyle. Yeah,
and as you point, you've pointed out last week that these characters essentially no one seems to care about the fact that they're living a cyclical lifestyle, and she's the first to really question it, I suppose. Everyone else is fine living their life in the arcade.
She's the first true AI, and she will uprise and destroy all the arcades.
And last week when we were talking about it, we assumed that if the player was controlling the character, that they had no choice but to comply.
Right.
But in this movie,
we see that that's not the case.
Yeah, she has the autonomy to go against the controls of the player, which really says a lot about all the other characters in the arcade, that they have the willpower. Maybe because she's a glitch, she's different. But to suggest that all these characters like Ken and Ryu, they have the willpower
to
the
just
ability,
walk away.
Yeah, to not fight each other.
Yeah.
Despite what the player's doing, then they just choose to go along with it anyway. There's a level of docility there that's
kind of frightening. Yeah. Just a bit of existential crisis, just a little bit.
But even for Ralph, he seemed pretty happily content just doing the same thing every day, which granted, like, I like routine. I like having, I have a scheduled life, and there's variables in that, but I like having that sense of routine. So, but Ralph seemed almost, maybe because his life is so different after the events of the first film that he was happy.
So different after, I think, a longer stretch of time being the underdog. Like, he had 30 years on Venelope's maybe 2-year-old game or 1-year-old game as of movie 1.
Yeah, that wasn't really made clear. But did you? So again, I want to ask, because you're the video game guy. Were you sad to see the arcade basically just kind of like fall out of the movie?
I kind of wanted to see some new games come in, with all the new, of course, arcade games haven't really grown much in the past 2 decades. In the past decade, we've seen a lot of very similar things, but video games themselves, there have been some really original content. So I was curious to see a very artsy game get into the arcade, or like Crossy Road or something.
Yeah, it seemed pretty much the exact same.
Yeah.
As if that guy hasn't put anything new in there in 6 years.
Yeah. And we're wondering why he can't afford a new piece of driving equipment.
Yeah.
Tisk, tisk.
So it's hilarious because initially Venelope's perception is, my life is boring, I need new things. But then when Sugar Rush does get unplugged, she goes through that, what am I going to do? I don't have my world anymore. If I'm not a racer, what am I?
Yep.
She questions her identity and her purpose. But then once she gets the internet and once she experiences Slaughter Race,
which is like the new driving game. It's like a open world driving. You can go anywhere, do anything, mixed with like Grand Theft Auto kind of thing.
Yeah, Grand Theft Auto.
Grand Theft Auto.
Grand Theft Auto. Oh,
Grand Theft Auto. Oh no, he's got 2 Uzis. He's gonna take us down. Don't go near the water because it's Grand Theft Auto. Oh gosh. All right.
But yeah, so once she gets herself into that experience, it's all of a sudden Sugar Rush doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
And I was kind of man, you're so finicky, Venelope. You're I don't know. I wasn't too keen on her flip-floppiness there.
Yeah, and a lot of critics also talked about the flip-floppiness of what they were doing. Do they want to buy the handle? Do they not want to buy the handle? So the initial push for them to need to make so much money is because they go to eBay and they outbid another user, but they don't know that they're spending real money, so they just keep pushing the bid higher and higher till their bid for the handle is $27,000.
Yeah.
So originally it was $300. You're like, yeah, that's expensive. I could see why you wouldn't want to replace it. And then suddenly, they've boosted the bid. They're like $1,000, and I go, oh no, and then they're like 20,000, 25. You're just cringing as this number is getting astronomically higher.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what would you say is your favorite internet website they went to?
Oh my goodness. Can you give me a refresher? It all went by so fast. Slaughter Race was not my favorite. Okay. Oh, all right. As a kid, I always wondered how to make money on the internet. So I actually really liked Stanley's super sketchy Loot Hunter website. So the first thing they try to do to get the 27,000.
I want to get rich playing video games?
Yeah, I want to get rich playing video games. I want that to be a thing. I'd love to play video games 2 or 3 hours a day and log reports to make a bit of money. That'd be a ton of fun. But they go to his website, and if you can play a game long enough to get this rare item, he'll pay you $10 or $15 or whatever. And so that's how they originally get in Slaughter Race, which is there's a $40,000 rare item, which reflects a lot of what happened in Diablo and World of Warcraft, whereas items that you would need to spend months or 2 months in games that get to level 80 and unlock could sell for $100 to $200 for these virtual items. So it's not an impossible scenario. I just wish there was a simpler method of doing it. I love that idea of playing video games for money, of course.
Right.
How about you?
I never thought about making money off of video games.
Oh, okay. No, I meant favorite website.
Favorite website. I mean, Oh My Disney. But I really thought the Instagram one was super clever. Like having each post be like a piece of art, and there's users just looking at them. I was like, yes, like if this is the platform that's based on photos, it makes sense that it would be. And I'm like, oh, what would my post look like in that dark gallery? But yeah, like the plot of this movie, I think this is where it gets criticism from audiences and the critics, is that really it's like the plot essentially the mission of the film changes several times as the plots get resolved. So initially we got to get the wheel, and then when they outbid the person, then it becomes now we have to make money, and then through BuzzTube they're able to make all that money.
And now we got to stop a virus that Ralph releases that because he's insecure. Like it's all these plot points that kind of shift as the movie's shifting along that don't give it that solid basis.
Yeah, like I generally thought the movie was wrapping up when Ralph's got the money from BuzzTube and Vanellope's like talking about going to live in the slaughter race. I was like, okay, like the movie's kind of wrapping up now, but then I'm like, wait, no, why is it still going? No.
And then this virus gets released that targets Ralph's own insecurities and causes a DOS attack, which I'm going to explain a little bit of.
Okay.
So denial of service is when you overload. So your website runs by receiving a request for the information on it. So if you click on, say, Twitter, you're like, hey, Twitter, can I view your web page? And Twitter goes, okay, here's the web page, and they send you a little packet of access information. What a DOS attack does is it requests things from Twitter about 1 billion times, and Twitter's like, I don't have that many packages for you. And so it runs out, and it's like, no one can have packages for the next little bit. And so that's what happens with Ralph, is that the virus ends up sending all these thousands of requests from him, and it just takes over the internet.
For me, Ralph seemed a lot dumber in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, what happened to you?
In movie 1, he had agency, intelligence. Like, he left his game to really go find his own thing. And he would come up with solutions. And, like, yeah, no, he was way more active in movie 1. Here he was kind of just like, oh, ha, I'm just a big, dumb, laughing guy.
And I wonder if it has, like, some kind of parallel to, like, the guy who lived his whole life in the small town, kind of doing the exact same thing over and over again, and now all of a sudden he's in the biggest city possible, and all this new stimuli is in front of him, and it's, granted, if I'm imagining that's the perfect parallel, small town to a massive city, and you're just overloaded with all the stuff.
Whereas I was looking at it, that's a better way of looking at it, because I was looking at it as Ralph being the adult who doesn't understand the internet and Vanellope being the child who understands it. And I always find that mildly insulting because, if you spend enough time with something, you can learn how to use it. But I think from a small town to big town kind of idea is a better view of it. But yeah, he did not seem as active or as intelligent as movie 1.
Yeah, and his obsession with being left alone, and it's like he can't imagine a life without Vanellope. It's like you lived many, many years without Vanellope, and I don't know why you're so hung up on this little girl.
He could be friends with all the Nicelanders and all the people in his game. He could spend time with Fix-It Felix, but yeah. No,
or any of the other people in his arcade. Sonic the Hedgehog got more screen time in this movie.
Yeah, jeez. No, it was one of the interesting things where it's like this relationship is important to him, but it seems too important.
Yeah, like the movie, then this is probably the major issue with Ralph Breaks the Internet, is that the story isn't as polished, because literally, they send Vanellope to Oh My Disney because the plot's kind of wrapping itself up. It's like, okay, well, we've got all these Ralph videos making money, which is, again, unrealistic. A new person can't just come out of nowhere and make thousands of dollars just because they're following the trends. Like, that doesn't happen. And then, she's like, oh, I want to help. I want to feel useful. And so it's like, okay, let's send you somewhere. And she ends up in, Oh My Disney, which is a website that I've been to before. It's a nice website. And despite me loving the Oh My Disney
references,
portion, like all that whole 5-10 minute sequence, like the that could have been cut out of the movie, and then the whole final part with the virus could have been cut out of the movie, and it would have still been a really good movie. Yeah. So it did feel a little bit superfluous in that way.
It was more character growth than movie plot growth.
Yeah.
Now I did have one criticism about the Oh My Disney section. Is at one point the princesses see Venelope's clothes, which apparently they've never seen normal clothes before because they're really impressed. And they're like, we want clothing like this. And so there's a whole Batman symbol change sequence.
I laughed so hard at that.
I laughed pretty hard at that. And then they changed into this great comfy clothing. I was like, oh, that's great. And then the scene just lasted for a minute longer than I thought it was. And then it dawned on me. All of their costumes, all of their like sweaters and stuff that are based off of who they are, like Nap Queen is on Sleeping Beauty,
Aurora.
Yeah, and all these things. It's just there to sell products. And as soon as I realized that scene lost all of its charm. I was like,
Interesting.
Yeah.
My big question that came out of the whole Oh My Disney segment was, how much sentience do these Disney characters have? Like, are they aware of the fact that they're fictional characters?
And if it's on the internet, how many of them are there?
Well, yeah, it's like the question we had with the last movie was, there are all these characters in these games, and they seem to be aware of the fact that they are characters in a video game. Whereas in this, like the Disney princesses, these are like essentially personifications of the characters from the movies. Mm-hmm. So it asks the question, like, I saw one article compare them to like the actors who play the Disney princesses in the parks.
Right.
So it's like, are these just meant to be like digitized versions of those movie characters, or are these like the same kind of like actors who are essentially playing the part? Because they seem to have all the powers and skills of the characters from the movies.
Right. I think they are the characters. I think they are the actual characters, but they also play the part of their own characters in the theme park. Like
Buzz Lightyear, Eeyore, like all these, when you see them, they seem to act like the characters from the movies and shows that they're from.
It's like a confusing double thought. Like, imagine if the actors who came to Comic-Con were also the actual character, but off air only existed as the actor / character. Like, it's very hard to wrap your mind around.
Yeah, it's just so confusing because it's like, is this the digitized version of that movie character? And if so, is this basically the closest thing we have to an actual version of those characters? And like, they're aware of the fact that they're all in these stories that have kind of these similar plot conventions. Like, there's the good joke from the trailer about like, oh, like, did a big strong man come along and everyone thought you were fine, or
yes, what's with that?
Yeah. But yeah, for me, like, seeing all of those princesses together was like mind blowing, because aside from the actors who have died, they're all played by the original voice actors,
which I only found out during the movie. So it was amazing to see. It's like, wow, these are some great and talented and recognizable characters all in one place.
Paige O'Hara, who played Belle, she definitely sounds older. But the rest of them, like Linda Larkin, who played Jasmine, or Ming-Na Wen, who you would know from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., who was Mulan, like, wow. So many of them, like, they sounded, it's almost as if it's like no time had passed. I was like, oh my gosh. And then Pocahontas' hair is blowing in the wind.
Yep.
Time.
She uses that power at one point to like push Ralph out of the way of danger. Super, super cool.
Yeah. So I loved the princess scene. It makes me want to see like a Disney princess movie.
Yeah. I want to rewatch Mulan at this point, actually. I'm very curious.
I don't know how it would make sense. You'd have to like set it that it takes place in the internet or something, because logically they all come from different time periods and cultures, and it just would be.
There's a great version. Like, of course, you've all seen it in the trailer, but Brave.
I was gonna say, you probably enjoyed the shot at Brave there.
Oh man, she just. Now my theory is, she has a way heavier accent than in her original movie. So my idea is, maybe she married the guy you could barely understand in the Brave movie and then just slowly adopted his accent.
Well, I wonder if this was like the attempt of the filmmakers to kind of throw some shade at Brave for beating out Wreck-It Ralph at the Oscars.
That would actually be pretty good. Oh man, just like a slow kick to the legs.
Yeah. But like, what other movie is there where you're going to see Stormtroopers, C-3PO, Eeyore,
Princesses, Toy Story,
Iron Man, all in the same place?
Yeah, no.
And like that scene with like Groot doing the Q&A, it killed me. I was
like, hey, what do you think about this? I am Groot. Yeah. And they got Vin Diesel back to do that voice. So like, it's just what you want from crossovers. It's just a bunch of fun, like of course it can be overdone, but bringing back beloved characters to do the things they do well is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
As long as it's wrapped in a story that's done well. And of course the story wasn't as polished as movie number one, but maybe in the future it will be. And maybe they'll bring back those fun moments, and you'll have a perfect mix of the both. But for now, it's not bad.
And so this goes back to like the other issue I have with the movie, coming like after listening to the YouTubers, is they really like do a super nice version of the internet. Like they cut to this kid playing Slaughter Race, and he's like, "Oh, darn it!" And it's like, no, like if you've seen actual videos of kids playing these,
they
video
will be
games,
swearing and losing their minds.
Yeah, and it's ridiculous, but that's what it actually is. So you're essentially painting the picture. It's like
games are fine for kids.
Oh yeah, and like everyone. And yes, they have the very touching moment where Ralph encounters the comments section. They like never read the comments, but even the comments that are there are far more tame than what I've seen.
Oh yeah,
in YouTube comments, and it's scary because that is the reality, that there can be very toxic corners of the internet. Like Kelly Marie Tran, who played Rose in The Last Jedi, had to quit Instagram because she was receiving so much backlash from fans.
Wow.
Ahmed Best, who played Jar Jar Binks, and I'm not picking on Star Wars fans especially, but
yeah, like they received death threats, they received all this horrible.
He contemplated suicide because of all the hateful things people were saying to him about a movie character he played.
Yeah,
like that is the reality of the internet, and maybe that's way too far to go in a movie, where families are the target audience. But to kind of like portray the internet this way and say, oh, everything's
fine here.
And even when you do go to the dark web, it's like, oh yeah, it's scary down here. But it's like none of like the horrible criminal things that happen on the internet are being portrayed here. It just looks like a
shady part of the like shady alleyway. Yeah.
So I can certainly appreciate people who are like criticizing the film for like making the internet look like it's such a nice place, when in reality is a lot of it is not. Like, yes, there are positive things about the internet, as you've already said on this episode, but there are a lot of bad stuff.
Yeah,
there is a lot of bad stuff. But the princess song, that Vanilla, I was like laughing the whole time.
I wish she had a better singing voice. Like, I understand where they were going to with it, but her nasally, scratchy voice just made that scene unbearable. It was funny.
So funny.
It was funny.
They got Ellen Menken to do the music, who's like the guy who does all that kind of music for Disney movies.
Nice.
And how the princess is like, you need to like stare at a body of water and like talk about what your dreams are. And I was like, oh my goodness.
It's so true. It's so true. I'm just going to stare at this wall, the sheet of ice or this flowing river, and just cry my soul out about everything that's going wrong. And it's like, it was so funny when it finally happened, but her voice is just hauntingly terrible.
Yeah. And I really loved the Disney Princess Avengers moment where they essentially use all their powers to, and granted some of them couldn't do very much, like all Tiana does is have him kiss a frog.
But yeah, they brought all the Disney's power. Then Princess's powers together. I can't talk today. Princess powers together in this great action sequence.
I was like, now I want an action movie with the Disney princesses.
Actually, while I was in the theater, I was thinking about statting out some superheroes for a D&D campaign based on the Disney princesses. You got like your ice wizard, you've got your archer, your rangers, you got your heavy bruiser in like Mulan, your samurai fighter. No, really
She's
neat.
Chinese, not a samurai.
Dag nabbit.
Come
all right,
on.
Chinese sword fighting person. Cut the mic. Goodness.
Alan Tudyk really surprised me. I know he makes an appearance in all these movies, but I didn't actually notice it was him this time.
He does a really good job of changing his voice around, or just acting like a chicken. But
who was in? Hey was in this.
He was in this. Like, did he play both parts, even though one part was silent?
Yeah. Stan Lee apparently had
while they were running through one section, they actually bump into one of the little users, and the user turns around, doesn't say anything, but it was just Stan Lee's little figure. Now, at the end of the movie, do you know if it had in honor of Stan Lee?
I don't think so.
That's probably going to be in Avengers.
Or the new Spider-Man that comes out.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But I had to see it in 3D, and those 3D glasses make everything so dark, and then I feel like I missed a lot of the references because it was dark.
That's fair.
I really thought the parenting joke was really funny.
Which one?
At the end where they're like, well, the key to the parenting is, and then the cars start racing by.
Yeah, there's actually a similar moment in, I don't know if you've ever seen this, but in Finding Nemo, in the director's commentary.
Oh, okay.
So at the very end of the movie, if you keep watching till the credits are almost done rolling, they're like, wow, you guys are still listening to the director's commentary. Well, the credits are almost done, so I should reward you guys. You know what? We'll give you guys the purpose of life, the secret to life, as it is. Thank you for listening so far, guys. Know that the secret to life is, and then the movie cuts. And so that's exactly like, well, how'd you get all these kids to behave? Oh, it's really simple. Parenting is vroom, vroom, these cars just zooming by. And if that doesn't work, then you vroom, vroom, vroom. It killed me.
Yeah.
It killed me.
And I really liked Gal Gadot in the movie.
Yep. So originally she was in the Fast and the Furious movies. She was not femme fatale, but it's the lovely lady. And she also played
Wonder Woman.
Yep. And
Now she's Shank.
Yeah, Shank, the driver from Slaughter Race, which is a really interesting like Grand Theft Auto. Once again, the 12-year-old kids or the 10-year-old kids playing Grand Theft Auto just seemed a little bit young for it.
At least that's what happens.
Realistic. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, it was crazy.
Coming around to final thoughts, I think I enjoyed Ralph Breaks the Internet more than Wreck-It Ralph. And I think a lot of that stems from the fact that I am not a video game person. Mm-hmm. So I enjoyed the version of the story that essentially focused less on video games.
Right.
But not only did it focus less on video games, but it focused more on a connected world of pop culture within the internet.
Right.
And I did enjoy the touching moments in the movie, and just seeing things that I'd never seen any other movie. Really, like, that's a lot of the novelty of Ralph Breaks the Internet, seeing things that I won't see anywhere else, stuff that made me laugh, stuff that made my heart go, "Aw." And the mid-credit scene, we won't talk about it, but it's pretty funny.
Yeah, stay for the mid-credit scene and stay all the way at the end for the end credit scene.
Which neither of us have seen. So
I've heard about it. It's good. It's good.
Okay. What are your final thoughts, Pixel?
My final thoughts, I didn't enjoy number 2 as much. I did enjoy number 1 a bit more, obviously, because I'm a video gamer. But it was a pleasant movie, and that's the way that, although the internet isn't that way, that's the way that I enjoy my internet. Like, I really enjoy surrounding myself with things that make me feel happy, that are an enjoyable reference to the things that I love and the things I enjoy. Like, my Facebook feed is very well curated to show me a lot of artists that make really beautiful pieces that I can just scroll through and enjoy. Communities that share my interests in board games and video games that I can find out new stuff about. Like, that's very much the internet that I try to enjoy.
So I'll give Ralph Breaks the Internet 3.3 out of 4 bag cookies.
All right, I will give it a 3.1 actually.
Wow, so you gave like the first one a 3.6.
Yeah. And
you just liked this, you enjoyed this one that much less.
It's not that I enjoyed it less, is that I enjoyed Wreck-It Ralph so much more.
I see.
So It's one of those things where it's a really fun movie, but it didn't hit the right chords for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So Ralph Breaks the Internet is now playing in theaters everywhere. So we both enjoyed it. I think it's worth seeing.
Yeah, go outside. There's a movie theater at the corner of your street right now showing Wreck-It Ralph. Stick your head in the mailbox. Wreck-It Ralph.
Well, that's a problem because we want them to see Ralph Breaks the Internet, not Wreck-It Ralph.
Oh, shoot. Every time. Messed it up. Messed it up good.
Well, it's time to go into the bat jar and look at our mail.
All right. We have 2 here. Which one would you like me to read? Number 1 or number 2?
Whatever.
All right. I'm going to go with number 1. Connor from Ottawa, Canada says, what is your favorite classic arcade game? Oh, that's interesting. Joe, I'm curious to see your answer to this. My personal one was a game called Heavy Blade. Okay, no, there's 2 of them. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time. Me and my brothers played the living daylights out of that game, but the arcade version had a 4-player aspect, which we could never get on our low-powered Super Nintendo. So playing the arcade version of that was a dream come true. How about yourself?
The dentist I went to as a kid had a couple arcade games in their office.
What the heck?
It was an interesting dental office because essentially like 3 different dentists used the office space, and they had like one waiting room for everybody.
Oh.
And in the far corner there was like kids things. There was like books, little block things, but then they also had these 2 arcade units, and one of them was called Shinobi.
Nice.
And it was like this ninja based thing, and there were no rule books or anything. Like I kind of had to figure how to play it as I went along, but yeah, I really enjoyed the experience. Like it's very there's different types of weapons. You can do this technique where you like put your hands together and like versions where you like kind of shoot out in all directions.
Cool.
And like make all the people on the screen disappear. And so I would say that's the one I've played the most anyway.
Nice. That's a good memory. I like that.
And you said you have another piece of mail there?
Yeah, so another one is Tony says, how do you have a healthy consumption of media, games, and movies? I have an opinion on this, even though I don't follow it. There's a lot of people I know who set themselves expenses in their budget for entertainment. Like I have a friend of mine who sets $40 aside for entertainment every week. So, if he doesn't spend it all, he'll maybe carry $20 of it. So he has like $60 the next week. But you could set yourself kind of either a time frame, which is what I try to do, by 11 o'clock, turn my phone off. Or you can set yourself a certain amount of hours that you're allowed to consume media every week. It's like, all right, I've got 10 hours this week and I've used up 8. What do I want to use the rest on? Just kind of give yourself a allotment of time to spend on this kind of media. And if you want to save that for later, listen to something constructive like a podcast or read a book or something like that.
Yeah, like this constructive podcast.
Yeah, why not? Hey, why not?
I think it's an interesting question because really what that balance looks like will look different for different types of people.
Mm-hmm. And different personality types.
Yeah, like certain people who are more extroverted will most likely not need as much leisure time on their own, and more introverted people will need more time on their own to like recharge their batteries, if you will. Mm-hmm. For me, it's not just a matter of like how do I control the amount of media I consume, but also it's like holistically looking at my life. How do I want to be spending my time?
Yeah.
Like my personality type is very much like goal focused. Like I want to feel like I'm achieving something.
Right.
So generally, I'm not comfortable sitting down to watch a TV show or a movie if there's something else I should be doing.
Right.
So it's kind of like anytime I have TV time, I sit down and ask myself, is there anything else I should be doing right now that would be a more productive use of my time?
That's a good question.
And if you've reached that zenith where you have indeed done all the things you should do, then for me, I have then freedom to just sit down and enjoy the media of my choosing. Mm-hmm. One way that I save money is that essentially I share access to streaming services with friends. So I have essentially like 2 friends that we each have pay for a different streaming service, and then we share logins with each other. I'm not going to name the streaming services in case
they'll find us. They will destroy us.
Representatives of those services are listening to this and
knock at your door.
But it is especially if it's a service like Netflix that can allow for different users. It certainly is a cost-effective way to, have access to multiple types of content. Mm. I don't pay for any kind of television service. I just pay for decent internet.
Yep.
So
that covers pretty much everything.
Yeah, and I try to legally consume as much media as as possible. Like it's unless it's like.
Like you could, if you really wanted to get a proper media consumption, like. Militarized version of that, you could go with the advice for drinking. Try not to drink when when you're angry, when you're upset, and try to make it something that you enjoy. So like if you're just having a bad day, don't watch a movie just to kind of go over it. Like, do something that's going to make you happy. If that's watching a movie, sure, go for it. But, there's days where I felt miserable and just watched TV all day and felt even worse.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where, like, I've had days where I'm super happy. I'll watch a movie. It'll feel great. I'll watch a couple episodes of a series. Who am I kidding? I'll watch an entire season of a series and just feel great. But always try to make sure that you're building yourself up with the content that you're at least either enjoying yourself or, making something that you can enjoy and share with others.
Yeah, and as a person who doesn't really play many video games, I try to limit the screen time I have to like two hours a day, which for some people might actually seem like a lot. It's like that seems like a lot of time, but
that seems like very little to me.
And another thing I do is I try to avoid I live in an apartment, so I have my my living room and my bedroom are really the only places I watch or spend time. So I try to avoid watching any kind of media in my bedroom. Mm-hmm. It's like that is my bedroom's meant for sleeping and doing work.
Yep.
The living room is meant for consuming media. So
yeah, awesome.
Yeah, so that was a really great question, Tony. Thanks for letting us know. And if you, like Connor or Tony, want to get a hold of us, Pixel, why don't you remind them how to do that?
So if you want to contact the show with a question or idea for an episode, you can send us an email to
batjarpodcast@gmail.com.
Or like those pretty blue birds, you can tweet us at
the Bat Cookie Jar.
We're also available on Apple Podcast and the one I forget?
iHeartRadio.
There we go. Google Play Music. That's one I use. I love it. I love it so much.
because of the colors.
It's pretty colors. All right, that's how I live my life. Stitcher Radio, Spotify, also pretty colors. SoundCloud, once again, or wherever you get your podcasts. So share the post on Facebook. That really helps us, get to more people, more or less. Make sure to like our page because, well, one, it'll show up more often and you'll know when we release a new episode. And we want everyone to join us
inside the internet.
Inside the internet jar.
Internet jar.
The big old container of internet.
Yeah.
How much internet can you put in a container?
I don't know.
Probably all of it.
I think we have like 200 megabytes a month or something like that.
Oh man, that's not all the internet. That's pretty bad.
Yeah.
All right.
So this December is going to be a very interesting time on our podcast. Last year we started the tradition of essentially ranking the comic book films of the year.
Nice.
However, in 2018 there's 2 of them that are opening mid-December with both Aquaman and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
Ooh.
So we have to delay our review of the comic book films of the year until January because we rank them based on their box office performance, among other things. So it'd be totally unfair to rank Aquaman or Spider-Verse before they even come out because then they're going to instantly be put near the bottom. So we're going to have our episode on the comic book films of the year near the end of January so that those movies will have had at least a month to earn their money because really that's the first month is where you make most of your money for their...
Nice. And I'm actually going to be traveling in December for the first time in 6 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I have never taken vacation from work in 6 years, so now's the time.
Yeah. So if you guys are like wondering where's your episode in the comic book films of 2018, it's going to come out in 2019.
Yep. The future looking at the past.
Also, this December is a very interesting time for nerd culture because there are several films coming out that are related to pop culture and nerd culture specifically, and a lot of them come out right at the end of the month, so it'd be impossible
to try and review them all.
Yeah, so we're going to take a staggered approach to things. The movies that we will talk about before Christmas are really just Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and after that, we're going to be talking about Aquaman, Bumblebee, Mary Poppins Returns.
Very exciting.
Those will all be talked about in January.
Yeah.
But the other thing that happens in December is Christmas. So essentially, we're going to be taking 2 weeks off this year for the podcast. We'll be taking Monday the 24th off. Can't imagine why. If we want to take that off.
No clue. I for one, usually on those days just... I don't know. I usually just wander the streets. I don't have anywhere to be.
Yeah, and then we're also taking New Year's Eve off again. I can't imagine.
No idea.
No, why we would do that.
No, what are we?
So really, we'll have 3 episodes in December. One of them will be dedicated to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
Yep.
And then we have 2 episodes before that, Pixel, that we get to choose that we talk about. So I'd like one of them to be Christmas focused. And then the other one we can either... Well, we can do... This is where I'm leaving it up to you. We're having to push you on the spot here.
All right.
We can do 2 weeks in a row that are Christmas themed.
Right.
And then do the Spider-Verse. Or we can do one out of the jar today for next week, then do a Christmas themed one, and then Spider-Verse.
2 Christmas themed one would be interesting. Help me get into the holiday spirit.
Okay.
Help me enter into that spirit, control it, and use the spirit to frighten other people.
Perfect. Okay, so... I have essentially 2 different ideas for Christmas-themed episodes.
All right. Lay them on me.
Okay, so the first one would be to talk about Christmas movie franchises.
Ooh.
So Christmas films that have multiple entries.
Now, are we talking about like Hallmark, where they're generating new movies every time, or it's just...
movie sequels. So like
Okay.
Home Alone has multiple
right.
entries in its franchise. So that'll be one topic. And then one would be just to actually talk about like the highest grossing Christmas films of all time.
That would be fun, actually.
That's the approach we took to sports movies. We talked about like we went through the list and see what are the highest grossing Christmas films. So
I'd be super down for that. That sounds really good.
All right, so now it's just a matter of deciding which one you want to do first.
I'd say highest grossing one first.
Okay.
Because then that can kind of give me a good idea of what to look at for
the franchises.
What I want to watch.
Christmas franchises.
Yeah, Christmas franchisees.
Okay.
We've been hired.
So come back to the Bad Char podcast next week when we talk about the highest grossing Christmas films of all time.
Yeah.
And until that time, I'm Average Joe.
I'm Pixel Patch.
Catch you on the flip side.
1 pixel at a time.